And away we go. Hi, it's Dan Kingerski on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now YouTube platform. Yeah, I know I'm a little late. It's been a few weeks since I promised a season finale. At this point, I think we're getting almost ready for a season preview. Maybe that'll be in a couple of weeks as captains' practices start and rookies begin to report, all of that sort of fun stuff. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of go over the concern-o-meter that I wrote on Pittsburgh Hockey Now on Wednesday. What concerns you? From the lack of trades to the roster glut to a new coach to aging superstars. I think that's where we're going to start this week because we can talk trade all we want. At this point, obviously, I mean, this is not exactly breaking news if I tell you, obviously, general managers have not come to the table with acceptable offers for what the Penguins have to offer. Duh. So Kyle Dubas is sort of playing that game of chicken with himself a little bit, in so much as not lowering the price, holding on. Part of this game is convincing you, me, more importantly, other general managers that he's not going to lower the price on a Rickard Rakell, on an Erik Karlsson, Brian Rust. Now, I tend to think there are some other things that other teams could do if they get creative, very much like Kyle Dubas did last summer, wherein, I guess that was 2 years ago when Kyle Dubas pulled off the Erik Karlsson trade. And he talked about, lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together. I think if a general manager said, hey, we'll take this guy off your hands in exchange for a reduced price on this guy, those things begin to make a little bit of sense. And it allows Dubas to wiggle on his ask. Boy, you have to be careful how you say that sentence, don't you? Yes, wiggle on his ask because, to get the job done. He can say he got something instead of what he wanted. He got something else, and that allows him to hold the line on others. I thought there was some good news this week. That guy, Brian Rust, not Tristan Jarry, Brian Rust, invited to Team USA's orientation camp, where he is one of 23 forwards, presuming they'll probably take 15. I don't think they're going to have a strict NHL sort of roster rule. I think despite the fact Rust is not one of the 10 best American forwards, I mean, there's some really good ones that they've added smartly, such as Logan Cooley from the Utah Mammoth. There's some really good ones, but this isn't about the best 12 players you put on the ice. It's about the right 12 players. Team Canada already signaled their intention. They're looking for determination. They're going to add some grit. They're going to add some pounders. There's just no question whatsoever that Canada is going to beef up. You have no idea how that irritated Canadian fans, Canadian management, Canadian players probably too, when the Kachucks and JT Miller just dropped the gloves and beat on them in the round-robin tournament. Oh, sure, Canada won the gold medal. And you can say, aha, we won. No. That lesson of the Americans taking it to Canada, oh, that stung. That round-robin game was a game changer for the Olympic thinking. Full on, bar none, full stop, I would not be surprised to see guys like Tom Wilson make the Olympic team. guys who really weren't in much consideration for the Four Nations. So you know how these live chats work. I'm already 5 minutes in. I talk, you respond in the comments. We do this live, and then a little bit later on, I mean, you can watch this, on the website, on YouTube. I will also make this available via our podcast. If you haven't subscribed, go to the Pittsburgh Hockey Now podcast page. Right there, actually, I guess it's not right there where it used to be. Yeah, it's still right there across the top. Pittsburgh Hockey Now, right there, the black bar, podcast. You click on that, you can pick your podcast channel as you will. There is a little bit of a change coming to our podcast platform. We have this merger is starting to bear some fruit. We are signing a deal, or have signed a deal. The nice thing is I don't have to handle this anymore. I have other people handling it for me. I don't mind that whatsoever. Signing a deal with Odyssey. They own 93.7 The Fan and a few hundred radio stations across the country. And they've got their big old podcast platform, which pays a whole lot better than the $0 I was getting from Spotify and Apple. I was making all the money on YouTube. So, hello, Odyssey. Let's see if you can do a little better than the giants, as it were. So I'm going to get to the questions now. I appreciate all of you jumping on board. I didn't expect this to be one of those 2,000 viewer chats. First of all, because I didn't schedule it until about 10 a.m. on Thursday morning. And then, 3 hours later, we're on. And second of all, it is August 21st that we're doing this. I think we have officially lost the Yinzer viewer. Those guys who wear Steelers jerseys Sunday church, Tuesday to the grocery store. Let them know you support the team. We've lost those guys for a while. And they won't show up again until like January, when the Steelers season is winding down. Then they show up and let us know all the stuff that we have done in the previous 4 months doesn't count because they weren't here to read it, see it, or discuss it. Then they tell us all of the problems that you and I have gone over and solved and that often don't even exist. That's always a fun time of year for me. It's almost like Clark Griswold looking out the window and seeing Cousin Eddie roll up in the RV. You're like, oh, the Yinzers are back. Okay, here we go. So let's dive into the questions here. From Kyle, love to see you back, Dan. Missed these videos. Well, Kyle, I did take a few weeks off, no question. And I will tell you what, the stress had really burned me. I was trying my best to kind of get out from underneath of it, get a little bit of a fresher perspective on life, and just feel a little better about it. It didn't happen until this past weekend when I rode down to Marietta. In fact, oh, wait, my wallet's over on the table. I took Route 555. That's not the Pennsylvania 555 that goes from like outside Emporium down close to Du Bois. No, 555 in Ohio is a break your neck little mountainous corkscrew road, 62 miles. No one's bothered to count the turns. I mean, you're going downhill, corkscrewing, and then back up, switchbacks. And I was having a ball. Got to Marietta, gorgeous little town. I was shocked. I'd never been there before. I never thought of it. I rolled through like on Route 7 a couple of years ago, and I went down to Knoxville just to ride a motorcycle road down there. It's called the Dragon. It's like the most famous. But I rolled through, and I just saw a bunch of McDonald's and Long John Silver's and didn't realize there was like a downtown area with all these old buildings and some good little restaurants, and sitting by the river reading a book. So I finally feel a little bit better. And and ready to do more of these and a bit more writing. Get back into it full force. Michael, yo, for the top 6, I can see Rust, Sid, and Rax, Ville, Gino, and Rutger. Or do I see Rutger not in the top 6? Really good question. Now, Michael, the obvious answer is that Rutger McGroarty and Dan Muse will make that decision. Probably in that order, by the way, too. McGroarty will have full opportunity to establish himself in a prime role in the Penguins lineup. That doesn't guarantee him that spot, however. I like how he played until Rutger is a guy I can kid. I don't know if you read that long piece I wrote about what it's like to be a Penguins beat reporter, but the guy who wanted to egg my house was Rutger McGroarty. Jokingly, of course. This was we were covering the playoffs in Wilkes-Barre, and I was actually shopping for houses online. I'm rolling through. He's like, "Where are you moving? In case I have to egg your house." So we kind of tease each other a little bit there. But I was teasing him at the end of the season. Dude, no, you don't block that shot at the top of the zone like that. Not at that point in the game. What are you thinking? He's like, "Hey, the shot didn't get through." And that was probably a better answer. But that's the kind of player McGroarty is. It's also why he might not be a top 6 guy, why he might really find a great home on the third line. I don't know. I think his offense is too good to be on the third line, but his defense is what I think a lot of you don't know or underestimate. You assume because he's really good at scoring that he's not as good defensively. The reality is he's really a complete player. So worst case scenario for you, Michael, he's on the third line. That's the worst case scenario. You're not going to see him playing 8 minutes on the fourth line. You might see him on the third line killing penalties because he was a primary PK guy in Wilkes-Barre. Hope that doesn't answer your question or does in so much. Matthew, Dan, is FSG retaining ownership better than this new potential ownership based out of Chicago? Okay. Is the fact that FSG is retaining ownership, is that better than the Hoffman family based out of Chicago, or better than even Mario and Burkle coming back right now? In other words, should we as fans value stable ownership? Interesting question. That I think I have taken the negative in terms of selling more so than most have, only because I believe with the development going on, with the Penguins not yet hitting rock bottom in terms of their transition to a rebuild. Maybe they have. I mean, if they haven't hit rock bottom, we're pretty close to it. Of course, the bottom could fall out too. You don't know how long this is going to take. The Penguins could miss the playoffs for another 5 or 6 years. I don't believe a person or company with a $2 billion net worth would be able to adequately sustain potential losses. This is what happened to Howard Baldwin 30 years ago. All respect to Howard Baldwin, whom everybody loved when the Penguins were winning, and he was throwing money at players and the team like sailors at a strip club. Woohoo! There we go. When things turned south, he was in trouble. And I can't help but be burdened by that knowledge, by that lesson, by watching a guy like Roger Marino, who was a great businessman, come in the late 90s. And he took a look at the books and said, "Oh, to hell with this." And he basically strangulated a lot of the expenditures. Just cut them off. And he took a lot of public flack. I mean, he's kind of forgotten about in Penguins lore. He really is. And at the time, he was kind of a bad guy. He was kind of a villain. But the reality was he just wasn't going to spend money that they were never going to recoup. Had he spent some money, maybe they don't go into bankruptcy. There's a whole case to be made. You have to spend money to make money. And maybe he didn't risk enough. Maybe he was being a bean counter. But all those things have to be taken into account. If you're worth $2 billion and you buy a team worth $2 billion, technically you've doubled your net worth, I suppose, but you have to liquidate and you have to spend and you have to take loans and debt services. They're not cheap right now. Fed Reserve is 4%, 4.5% actually for money. I'm actually in the process of buying a house. And 7%, 6.5%, 7%, to get some of the extra programs and guarantees that I would like to buy a house at this point in my life. Capital ain't cheap. So, I mean, look, what has FSG done wrong? Let me put up a little, I knew we'd get to the ownership here. I'm going to take your question off, Matthew. I appreciate you. What has FSG done wrong? They've kept the core. They didn't force a sell-off. They hired Kyle Dubas. They allowed Kyle Dubas to fire Mike Sullivan. They've allowed Kyle Dubas to spend money on veterans that they otherwise have no use for. I'm talking Kevin Hayes. I'm talking Cody Glass. Spend money on taking a shot with a guy like Philip Tomasino. Who else? Oh, Matt Dumba this summer. Dubas went back to the playbook. They've allowed him to essentially open up the wallet and go buy additional draft picks. So, I mean, what has FSG done that's so terrible? Yeah, they're Boston guys. And is that any different from being Chicago guys or Ron Burkle, a California guy who owns Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch? I'll let you chew on all of that. To me, I don't think that the Burkle-Lemieux group, as it is currently constituted, would be the best option. Although I do think Burkle has enough interest in the team that he would trade a good deal of his net worth to make it happen and would have enough money to spread around the Hill District. That being said, I don't know that anybody really, really has a burning passion to develop that part of the Hill District. It's been 75 years. That land has been parking lot and neglected and so forth. And it's not exactly like the North Shore is booming. How many places what was the old brewery down there on the river? They had a great blonde ale. Now it's Voodoo Brewing. But those places come and go down there. Southern Tier Brewing has lasted about a decade down there. That's pretty good. So is Bar Louie and what's the hillbilly bar? Oh, Cadillac Ranch. I mean, Bettis went out and, it hasn't been a great or a stable investment down there, even with Stage AE. So I suppose you look at all of those things, and FSG is going to value them in a sale, and And somebody coming in is going to have the money and the willingness to develop. Otherwise, the city is going to go ape and make life more difficult. It's going to take somebody with a lot of capital, and I mean more than a couple or a few billion. It's going to take somebody who's got $5-10 billion and can take a bit of a bath on some of this stuff and not wake up the next day and worry about where it went. I spent a long time on that, didn't I? Do I think FSG is selling? No, I don't. I really, really don't think FSG is selling. I think some people are trying to lowball them to get them to sell, and FSG is holding the line on an equity partner. 9:00 yesterday morning, it might have even been 8:30. I started the email chain, emailed the Penguins, hey, can I get a statement, or even ask the alternate governor, Teddy Werner, some questions. Penguins connected me with the comms department at FSG, who got back to me like that. I mean, they were on it. I'm getting text. Rivertown Brewing was down there where Voodoo is. Yeah. They had a good Scottish red, too, that I rather enjoyed a few late nights. Their buffalo chicken dip. Oh, chef's kiss. Anyway, where the hell was I before I found out it was Rivertown Brewing? Oh, yeah, I got a first quote from FSG, which I tweeted out. And it was basically like, listen, there's nothing to report. We're looking for equity partners despite the reports. Okay, I said, hey, is that on the record? PR person said, yeah, sure. Then about 10 minutes later, she sent me back the more sanitized, polished up version, which I think the Post-Gazette also got. That was the only other place I saw it was in Jason Mackey's column, kind of telling you in a lot less words what I'm explaining in great depth now. That, in fact, it doesn't, FSG has every reason to hold on. And it's going to be tough for these other people to buy it and complete the vision. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Doesn't mean it won't happen. I'm just saying I think it would be really tough. How's that? Let's go to Jake Bacon. Let me get off this damned ownership. I feel like I could talk about the ownership thing for an hour. Hey, Dan, do you think Owen Pickering will get an extended look on the top pair this year? I do, actually. And the reason for that is because the Penguins don't have anybody else. You're looking basically the top left-handed defenseman. You're kind of rolling through four guys here: Owen Pickering, Ryan Graves, Ryan Shea, Parker Wotherspoon. Right? Am I missing anybody? I don't think so. And if I'm being bluntly honest, I think Pickering is the best of the bunch. I think this is going to be music to some of your ears, me saying this. And so I want to tread lightly. I don't want to go stomping through the flower bed here. I think Dan Muse will be greatly beneficial to Owen Pickering, much more so than was Mike Sullivan and David Quinn. I'm not saying they treated him poorly. I'm not saying they yanked him unnecessarily. What I am saying is that Pickering didn't necessarily deserve to come out of the lineup last year. His play was dipping. Sullivan and the coaches and the team were kind of panicking. They wanted to win games. And they see Pickering on, kind of going the wrong direction. And so they ended that experiment. That won't happen this year. If he starts going the wrong way, they might sit him for a few games, but they're not going to send him back down. I can't imagine a situation in which Owen Pickering is not on the blue line, first of all. Second of all, if he's in the lineup, Beside Chris Letang is a great spot, actually. Well, putting him beside Erik Karlsson, if Karlsson's still in Pittsburgh, that might be a little crazy. You might have to put Parker Wotherspoon there. And that leaves Ryan Graves and Ryan Shea battling for a left-handed spot. And of course, you know what a cluster that right side is with 6 righties for 3 or 4 spots. Yeah, not going to be fun to make those decisions. And quite frankly, I don't know how they're going to actually evaluate those and give everybody an equal shot. You're going to see some guys really not get a fair opportunity. So hopefully I answered that one. Peter, Dan, thanks. Listen, you guys don't need to thank me for doing this. Showing up is cool, and that's all I really need. How do I see the Penguins doing the wins and losses record this year? I haven't put much thought into that, Peter. I just really haven't. What were they last year? 34, 36, and 12? And those 12, I mean, good Lord, you realize if they just do a little better in overtime, if they are 40, 36, and 6, that's 86 points. Okay. Now that's still not playoffs for them. But it would have been in the hunt, right? Isn't that scary? Isn't that just think about that? And I'm actually not sure how I remember their record. I never remember little stuff like that. So if I'm going to guess, I am going to probably put them in a very similar record-wise. I'd probably say they're about a 35-win team. If Tristan Jarry goes nuts, like if he really just says to hell with all of this up and down and sending me back around stuff and grabs on and gets over that second half slump kind of stuff that he's had to deal with, it's a pretty good, it's at least, then it becomes a 40-win team. If Evgeny Malkin is energized either to keep playing or by his last ride, they're a little better team. With McGroarty and Koivunen and Pickering and those guys having some fun in the locker room, that could add a few more wins too. I mean, it's possible they could be a 45-win team and right there in the playoff thick. It's also possible with some injuries. If Crosby gets hurt, Malkin goes down, which, Brian Rust is out for an extended time. They go from a 35-win team, depending on the severity of the injuries, down to a 30-win team, and you're bubbling around that top 5 pick. I honestly, if you're asking me to predict, it's going to be, the statistics, the models project a much greater chance for the 35 and below win total than they do a 35 and above. Peter says, I'm a Yinzer. So does that mean you're going to leave me and come back in January and then just tell me all the things we've got wrong and everything that needs to change? Is that how that's going to work? Let's go to Zach. Thoughts on trying to bring Mike Matheson back to improve the defense? Nah. No, Matheson is 30 now. You're not going to be acquiring 30-year-old guys at this stage, because in 3 years, when the team is supposedly, on schedule to, really have that big uptick, you've got a 34-year-old guy, 33, 34, 35-year-old guy. That's just not what's going to happen. They are not trying to patch holes this year. They're trying to grow their own vegetables, so to speak, and they can wait. They're not going all in to make the playoffs this year. If they were trying to make the playoffs this year, and that was the stated goal, like the Boston Bruins are trying to flip the script, then yes, but the Penguins aren't. This is about the long term, and Matheson is short term. Let's go to Kyle here. As much as I love Dubas's iron hands, I'm a bit nervous. Not one of Karlsson, Rust, or Raquel are gone yet. With the addition of I forgot about Mantha too. With the addition of Mantha, the depth forwards such as Justin Brazeau and so forth, keeping them puts us in the mucky middle zone. Whose picture should I show you here? I will show you Erik Karlsson as I take Kyle off the screen. I don't necessarily think they're in the mushy middle. I think they're at the bottom of the mushy middle. And I don't know, I think there are trades coming. There have to be. Whether they happen before the season, whether they happen Christmas time, whether they're negotiated during the Olympic break and happen shortly after, but that short window between the Olympic break and the trade deadline, I think you're going to see a wild, sort of Wild West period of trades there. Give GMs 3 weeks off. They're going to go crazy. They're going to try to solve the Middle East peace process at that point. So from that standpoint, the team that's going to finish this season probably will look much different than it looks right now. And if the Penguins improve, into that mushy middle, it will be with young players who have the potential to take them out of the mushy middle. Does that make sense? This kind of ties right into the Mike Matheson question. You're not going to see them go out and get a 30, 32-year-old player to be a little bit better this season. Not happening. But if they can figure out a way to, I forget who acquired Isaac Howard out of Tampa Bay. Was that Seattle that snagged him? St. Louis? Colorado? I forget. You're going to see, that's what Kyle Dubas is trying for. And look, Detroit has some prospects. Detroit is out of time. Can the Penguins pry out Nate Daniels, who, was taking a few picks ahead of what was he, 11th overall? Could be, right? Taking a few picks ahead of Braden Yeager. That's what I was trying to think of. So I don't think I'd worry. I think should be concern like, geez, when's this going to happen? I'm anxious for it too. I really am. I want to see what comes next. Because we all know there is something next. I think we're all in the same, like, okay, come on. Show me. It's like a good Christmas present, or at least a big Christmas present. You see a big box, you want to open it up. Let's go to Lars Nielsen. Dan, if Erik Karlsson comes in motivated in 2025-26, would the Penguins look to trade him or change their mind as they finally got who they traded for? Lars, great question. Well, this is, you guys just kind of a producer couldn't have grouped these three questions better. Lars, the ladder has sailed. The Penguins will not be a Stanley Cup contender in the next 2 seasons. As much as they're in the mode of being impatient, it would take a miracle. They could get Gavin McKenna next summer, and it doesn't make them a Stanley Cup contender in the next 2 years. It just doesn't. Therefore, what is the benefit of Erik Karlsson and the Penguins staying wed? The only benefit would be if Erik Karlsson says, fine, to heck with it. I'm not going to be that vagabond bouncing around the league chasing a Stanley Cup. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not putting my family through that. I kind of like Pittsburgh, which he does. I kind of like playing with Sidney Crosby, which he does. Maybe I like this Muse fellow, which we'll find out, and just gets comfortable and says, nope, you guys can't trade me. That would be kind of the scenario. Or if he says, hey, I'm just going to stay put this year. Here are the 3 teams that I'll approve a trade to. And if you can get it done to one of these 3 teams, great. If not, don't bother me. That's a possibility. If I'm in Erik Karlsson's shoes, I would accept, I would be much more lenient. I would not be restrictive. I mean, I wouldn't go to some cities that I don't like. I'm not going to rattle them off. I always get hate mail when I start to saying I did a video in Winnipeg last year, and some car without a muffler goes rolling past as I'm talking. You guys remember this? It was like this windstorm as I'm sitting outside the arena doing a video, and I just quipped, I guess they don't have mufflers here. And I got like a dozen people from Winnipeg just mad at me. Like, relax, people. I don't hate Winnipeg. I hate the weather in January, but I don't hate Winnipeg. I actually rather like the people up there. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. There are some cities I just wouldn't go to no matter how competitive they were. But other cities like Detroit, Ottawa, who are on the cusp of becoming competitive, I would open my door to them. See here, Peter says, do the Penguins need a theme song to start the third period such as Renegade? That happened organically, man. That whole Renegade thing was not planned. It was not forced upon fans. It just happened. And by the way, my parents were at that Cleveland Browns playoff game that Renegade was born. Where Renegade was born. They left after the third quarter because the Steelers are getting blown out. And, you know, they're not diehard sports fans. They went, they're like, oh, guess this is over. They forgot about Tommy Maddox. So I think they watched from a bar across the street because the place was going nuts. Or maybe they got back in. I don't remember quite the story. Maybe they were close to the gate and heard the place go nuts and ran back to their seat. Or either way, they were. Let me tell you this, Peter, about a theme song for the Penguins. And I wish I could drive this home to the greater Penguins fan base. Listen to me, okay? All of you. You control the fan culture. I don't. The team doesn't. Ultimately, these crazy things that spring about, like who's the who's the guy who does the party hard? Andrew CK. I'd never heard of this guy before. It wasn't like the Penguins picked his song and the fans said, oh, great choice. No, there was like this groundswell from social media pushing this guy. And he got behind it too. They play it. They win some games. It's like this big thing. It began organically. So from that standpoint, guys, you control it. You control if you start chanting at people who leave after the second period, leave in the middle of the third period of a tie game. My friends gave up their season tickets a handful of years ago, and they started, the price went out of their budget. But they were like the crazy loons in the corner who would start the chants, beat the traffic, and chant at people, kind of shame them as they walked up the aisle. I thought that was glorious. I love that. I hate when people leave it a tie game or a close game in the middle of the third period. And then all the Twitter people, everyone gets sanctimonious. They have places to be just because they're not getting paid to be there like you are. How much did you pay for your ticket? They bought their ticket. They can come and go as they please. It's like, yeah, all that's true. Doesn't make it good form. Doesn't mean I can pick my nose in Starbucks. Doesn't make it good form or something you should do. Not that I have. I go to the small coffee shops to pick my nose, of course, like every self-respecting person. I save Starbucks, for scratching my butt. I kid. People think I'm some kind of heathen, but you get what I'm saying, right? You guys control things. Even if you don't like the guy on the scoreboard screaming, "Who wants a t-shirt?" By the way, what's her name? Susie Cool is taking over that spot now. Even if you don't like these people, you can still create a good time. Ever seen Montreal? Compare Montreal to Toronto sometime. Toronto puts on a great game presentation. You can't do it better than they do. And you hear crickets. In Montreal, they don't have to do a whole lot. You don't have people screaming on the scoreboard or, people doing somersaults down the aisle and riding railings. You don't have that. You don't need it because the place is going bananas over the hockey. Go bananas over the hockey is my point. Jason. Let's, there it is. Isn't it too close to training camp to trade players without it being very inconvenient for the players? I mean, tough luck. Sorry, guy. No, it's still a month to training camp. Actually, it's 27 days. It's going to start the 16th to the 18th of September after the rookie tournament. So, no, I mean, this is in the words of Hyman Roth, this is the life we've chosen. My colleagues can be fired tomorrow. Technically, I can kind of be fired nowadays. I mean, I still own part of the company, but in theory, if I do something crazy, I can be ousted. I can be traded. I can, that's just life. The only time you're not allowed to trade the players over the Christmas holiday, that December break. The Driz, as of right now, what's your read on what the lineup looks like? Game 1, trades, demotions, waivers. Good Lord, Driz. I've probably written about 100,000 words on that over the last 2 months. To put that into a concise 2-minute answer, impossible. What would you like it to look like versus what you think it will look like? Man, very detailed question. That answer is so voluminous, I couldn't possibly get into it on the video or in this podcast. What I will tell you the highlights, I would definitely work very hard to jettison the bottom 6 veterans to, kind of clear that brush for the young players. I would absolutely make sure that I have done my due diligence on every possible conceivable angle to trade Erik Karlsson. Clear up a bit of that logjam. But also part of clearing that logjam is Harrison Brunick. One of the highlights I'd like to see, besides McGroarty and Koivunen in the top 6 and playing well, I'd like to see Harrison Brunick on the Penguins' blue line on a regular basis, or at least be given full opportunity for that to happen. I'd also like to see Jack St. Ivany get that same kind of opportunity. The rest, I mean, I think the Penguins and I are probably in agreement on those things. Whether or not they can really happen, we'll find out, right? They can't make decisions now, so I can't really project what they will do. I think they will give priority to the young players, but the young player has to win the battle. It probably can't be. The young player has to prove that they belong rather than backing into the job. Hope that's sufficient enough anyway. Let's go to Matthew. How common are trades in the last couple of weeks in August and the month of September? Almost never, my friend. Almost never. Then again, the salary cap has never spiked like it has this summer. teams were never able to go out and afford almost all of the free agents they wanted and keep their players like they did this season or this offseason. This was really unprecedented. As a consequence, a lot of things left undone. Look, Matthew, the Edmonton Oilers cannot go into this season with the goaltending malaise which they are currently experiencing. You can't do it. You need a few things to change in Edmonton so it's not that stale, fart-smelling wind of losing 2 Stanley Cup finals. Goaltending would be the best way to give the boys some hope that this year could be different. They'll never say it, but in the back of their minds, they're wondering if they had Sergei Bobrovsky in net, would things have been different for them? You know that. So there's the Detroit Red Wings, who are kind of out of time, as I said earlier, in terms of getting over the hump. The Yzer plan is 6 years in, 7 years, 6, 7. A lot of years in. Haven't made the playoffs in 7 years. So what happens if they don't get over the hump this year? Steve Yzerman has to feel some heat. You can only take the slow boat to China so long before that boat has to arrive in the dock. And this is probably the year Detroit has to get there. So they have to make some moves sooner than later. Ottawa would behoove them to fortify their roster. It would behoove Toronto to find a top 6 winger. There's a plenty of other teams too. LA has to get a little better. They have to get past Edmonton and Vegas. Vegas could use a little refresh. Dallas has to be looking at what the heck do we have to do to get out of this conference final slump where we get there and get waxed every year. There is more potential that trade thing happens in between, mid-August and late September this year than there ever has been. Let's go to Nick. I'm calling it now, Nick says. Tristan's kid being born causes Jari to have dad's strength, and he goes nuts. You heard it here. Wouldn't be the first guy, especially as goaltenders get a little bit older. The maturity seems to help most goalies. Most goalies are better the closer to 30 they are. They're better closer to 30 than 20. It's just the thing. I don't doubt it with Tristan Jarry. He's got the talent. Michael Thompson, do you think this team's biggest problem is the defense or the goalie? Because both are uncertain, especially who's going to back up Jarry. Well, Archer's Sheloffs will get a good chunk of playing time. I can almost guarantee that. He would have to lose the job rather than him having to win it. They acquired him to play in the NHL. So, biggest problem I would say is probably going to be figuring out the defense. I don't think Jarry is going to stink like he did last year. I just don't. I don't think. I don't know about Sheloffs though. That is such an unknown to me. Sir John Elkin likes him a lot. Other teams wanted him. Edmonton actually wanted him, and Jim Rutherford said, no, you can't have him, and gave him to the Penguins for a 4th-round pick, which was reportedly a bit less or a lot less than Edmonton was willing to offer, which kind of cracks me up. That is so classic old hockey guy, not trading in your division, not helping them out, even at a little bit of an expense. So, yeah, I'm going to say the blue line and how bad they were last year. There could be some improvement. There have to be some improvement. They couldn't be as bad. Add some new bodies, add some new faces, make trade or two on there. Maybe getting to mediocre will be a big improvement rather than trying to be as talented as they are. Oh, Edmonton got Howard. A couple of you guys chiming in. Thank you. Let's see here. Zach Watson, do you think they will max out the salary cap before the start of the season? And what's the best way to spend it? No, I do not. And that's not because they're being cheap. It's because why? They have no reason to max out the salary cap unless it makes them better in the long term. And I'm not quite sure how that would work. But, that the only way they don't have to spend money right now because the players they want don't cost any money. Grab a brew. Don't cost nothing. Tank for McKenna, says Jay. Or Keaton Verhoff. You guys start including both of those, I think. Michael asks, are you afraid of the veterans overriding Muse, especially the personalities of someone like Gino and Tanger? I am wondering if Tanger plays bad, will Muse actually bench him? No. And I've been through this probably a dozen times, if not a million. When a coach starts benching pillars of the community, pillars of the locker room, star players, that coach is immediately putting all of his chips on the table. If the team does not believe it was warranted, if the team even says, hey, let him play through this, stuff goes sideways in a hurry. You can do that once every few years. Mike Sullivan didn't do it. Most NHL coaches don't do it. On this topic, Penguins fans get caught in a very small bubble of only looking at the Penguins and only looking at that last game. And it becomes a very myopic sort of discussion. That's bad. You have to look to the heavens and the stars and the sky on this one. And the only way that Chris Letang would get benched if things are egregious, if Muse thought he needed a rest, or there would be a long process leading to becoming a healthy scratch. We're talking conversations. We're talking, a long time to play your way out of that. That's not the veterans running the room. That's not the inmates running the asylum. That's just how it works in hockey. Plural hockey. All right, let's go to the Driz. Looks like the PG is reporting a when, not if, in regards to the potential sale of the Hoffman Group. I'll have to check that out. I did notice that that all comes from the same source, Serious Contender. Don't run with that term too literally. Because again, FSG gave me two statements yesterday saying, we're looking for an equity partner. They can't be any more clear on the matter. This same scenario played out with Liverpool too. When they sought minority investors, a lot of people tried to buy the team. They were all in the British tabloids, like every day. This person's buying the team. That person's buying the team. This person, that person. Oh, FSG is terrible. They're selling out already. This all happened, in the British papers, the tabloids especially. And they found their minority investor. They got their cash, and they sold the team. The team is doing quite well. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. I don't know how this gets resolved. I don't know the final score. I'm just giving you all of the facts. Just the facts, ma'am. And I'm interpreting them, after I give them to you. But, Apple has that weird thing. If you scroll on the touchpad wrong, it goes back. So I actually paged back out of this thing here. Let me get the microphone back and hooked up. Okay, good. It is. Yeah, anyways, I was saying FSG very well might sell out. They might very well feel like they've maxed out. They can't take this any further. They don't want to take it. You know, they might. I just there's something in my gut that says these people are coming forward trying to get a deal because they think there's blood in the water. And FSG doesn't have blood in the water. Make sense? All right. Let's go to Chicago. Just gave Nazar a 7-year, $6.6 million deal. Holy, what are they thinking? Good Lord, make the guy prove a little bit before you back the Brinks truck up to the deck. Holy moly. I'll let Chicago deal with that one. Jay says the next 3 drafts have franchise changers. McKenna, 26. 2027 is Landon DuPont. 2028 is Maddox Schultz. You do have to win one of those 3 lotteries. Let's talk again next summer if Landon DuPont is a franchise changer. Certainly, let's talk in a couple of years if Maddox Schultz. I mean, listen, there have been a lot of guys who get that franchise changer tag tossed upon them when they're 15 years old, and by the time they're 18, they're still a number 1 pick. But let's dial it down first. That is one problem of the click revenue age. And listen, I'm a product of it. Is that you don't get anybody reading if you don't add a little pizzazz. Hey, 27 DuPont, let's watch this kid. I get very angry at some of the people I follow on Twitter, who I'm actually fans of, who seem to never have a bad word. They never downplay. They never critique. It's always, sunshine. Yep, this guy's, and then I kind of go put my eyes on some of these people. I'm like, oh, they're good. Yeah, don't get me wrong, but it's, and then I become the bad guy for raining on parades, shall we say. Big Joe asks, if no trades are made by season's start, do we have a lot of players that may have to go through waivers? Yep. And notable players that will force things to happen, i.e. force trades or others cut. Yeah. Yes. Yes to all of that. This could be a bloody final week of training camp for the Penguins if a few players are not moved out. It really could be crazy. Now, understand, everybody, that in fact, oh, by the way, I need a drink. Let me show you my new coffee mug. If you're still watching, you can. That's my new coffee mug. Troy and Abed in the morning. Anywho, yeah, I mean, bear in mind, NHL teams cannot release players. This isn't the NFL where they can just cut players and say go somewhere else. The player has to agree to that kind of termination. And it happens only in very rare circumstances. Jesse Puljujärvi being one of those, where Jesse just sort of assumed he was going to drop into a better NHL situation, signs in Florida, assuming he's going to become an NHL player on a Stanley Cup contender, plays a few games, and otherwise was, relegated to the AHL. There is that to consider. We'll find out, right? I don't think any players are going to publicly say it's NHL or release me. I'll probably ask. Don't get me wrong. I'll do some digging. I don't expect anyone to actually confirm that. All right, let me do one more here. Oh, what's Dan's daily watch this week? You mean the wrist? I changed it up. I had my Tag Heuer Formula One on for the last week, but we're back to the aviation, the World War II Hamilton aviation watch. Okay, now here's the last question. What are fans missing in terms of how this rebuild, retool process works and how this team becomes dangerous again? Oh, I don't know that I have been very engaged with fans, and I have rather enjoyed the conversations about this rebuild. I understand the impatience. I understand the eagerness, anxiousness to see what comes next because I feel a little bit of it too. I actually probably have a more optimistic take on where the Penguins are than do most fans. The problem with the Penguins right now, the far and away the biggest thing, they have no centers. Beyond Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, there's no one to take the top six pivots. Tristan Brose might become kind of a second line center. I project him as more of a third line guy with some offensive pop, to be honest. Other than that, that's it. They have no. Oh, I take that back. Because you've got Ben Kindle now. You've got Bill Zonin. Zonin could be a power center. Kindle could be a slick top six center. But Kindle seems to be a few years away. Zonin could probably play in the NHL in the next 18 months as a winger. Maybe a center. I don't know. I'm not going to limit these guys. But Kindle has a lot of work to do. They got a guy with a great hockey IQ and some skills who has to do a good bit of work to make all of those be able to translate at the elite level to the NHL game. Zonin will have less of a curve to get here because dude's 6'3" and a bulldozer. That can play every team, every situation. You can find a spot for a guy like that. But the reality is, that all these draft picks, the 3 first-round picks, at least one of them is not going to pan out. Odds on. Just 50% of these first-round picks really make the NHL. So Penguins have 3. If they did well, 2 of them get there. If they're lucky, Kindle is close to as good as they thought. And they kind of have their second line center. Yeah, but they don't have that guy, that game changer. They don't have that leader. They don't have I don't want to say the next Sidney Crosby because there will not be a next Sidney Crosby unless they get Gavin McKenna. There just won't be. And that's unfair to have put that tag on anybody else. Completely unfair. The deal is, though, that they do need some top end offensive production from centers. I don't know if Ben Kindle gets there. I don't know. I'm not saying he won't. I'm not saying he absolutely will because it's, this was a weak draft, and they took a little bit of a gamble on a raw prospect. Your guess might be as good as mine on this one. I need to see a lot more of Kindle. Let's see him in training camp. Let's see how he progresses this year, and we'll know. But he is not going to be your star player. Your frontline sort of player who puts up 80, 90, 100 points. I don't think they project him to be to that elite level, and the Penguins are going to need at least one of those kind of centers, that bedrock number one center. All right, I see Brandon Rickner has checked in. Brandon, how are you doing? I hate to say this, guys. Me and my Pepsi, we're out of here. If you guys are just joining us, go back to the beginning. We have hit everything from the Penguins ownership, the trade's potential, so many of your questions too. So have fun, kids. We will maybe talk again in about 2 weeks. Maybe not next week. Have fun.